What's happening, guys? Today we're going to be taking a look at the 2020 Ford Edge Titanium all-wheel drive. This thing's powered by a 2-liter turbo engine, 250 horsepower, 280 pounds of torque. Factory towing option, this thing's got the ability to tow up to 3,500 pounds. I'm excited. Let's take a look and see what this vehicle's got to offer. Starting off, looking at the key fob here, we've got a few things. We've got our unlock button, our lock button, remote start, our trunk release, as well as our horn button or our panic alarm. Now, the vehicle does have the ability for an emergency access key as well. So there's a button at the bottom here. All we're going to do is push that button in order to reveal the emergency access key here. In order to be able to remote start the vehicle, all we're going to do is press this lock button once and then this circle button twice. And we've remote started the vehicle there. In order to cancel the remote start, we can just press this circle button once and it cancels out the remote start there. In order to be able to open up the trunk on this thing, there's a few different ways we can do it. So we can double click this button here, which is going to open the door up. From here, there are a few different ways that we can close it. We can double click on the button here. There's a button down here that we can press up at the top, or the other option, it does have a foot activated tailgate. So we can just swipe our foot underneath the vehicle, key in the pocket here. We're just going to swipe underneath. And as you can see, it can raise or lower the tailgate from there. Really, really cool feature, especially if you've got groceries in hand, kids in hand, whatever the case may be. And then another option to open it up, last one here, is going to be a button just underneath the tailgate here. Let's have a look inside and see what this thing's got. So as you can see here, there's quite a little bit of trunk space. I'm 6 feet tall and I can fairly comfortably get inside of this thing. If you've got golf clubs, you can fit them in here. You might be able to get them in this way, but if you fold one of the seats down, you're able to get in quite a little bit more. Now, looking in the back here, so popping up this back tray, as you can see, we've got our spare tire here. The jack is underneath. Off to the side here, we've got a spigot that can be used if we ever need to use a jerry can in the vehicle, in order to fill the vehicle up, I should say. Then as you can see, we've got a little bit of storage space throughout the back here as well. So strategically placed throughout these slots, which is a little bit convenient. So if you have some extra stuff you need to throw back there, you can. Now, looking in the back here, as you can see, we've got 2 seats, so 60-40 split. So we've got 60% on the driver's side and 40% on the passenger side. So you can fold them down independently of one another. It is a power down for the seat and then manually lifting it back up. Now, in order to be able to fold the seats down, if we look off to the driver's side of the vehicle in the back here, you can see we've got 2 individual switches, so left side versus right side. So if we press that left button here, so you can see it's folded down that left-hand side, and then to the right, let's swing around the side to see what that looks like and figure out how to lift these seats back up. There we go. So as you can see, the seats are fairly flat in the back here. In order to lift them up, it's exactly that. All we're going to do is just grab onto the seat and then lift it up here, and then it'll lock back into place for us. All right, now looking here at the back seat, as you can see, I'm 6 feet tall, and I can very comfortably sit in the back of this vehicle here. I still have quite a little bit, like 3-4 inches almost, well, maybe 3 inches of head space above me here. So there's tons of space in the back for those taller passengers. Couple things to point out here. If we look down, we've got heated seats in the back here, so we can activate those heated seats by pressing the button here. Moving down just a little bit, we've got a traditional wall outlet down here, so we can plug in a regular wall outlet that we would at home into the back of the vehicle. It's got a built-in inverter. On the other side here, we have our traditional 12-volt adapter, and then 2 other things I'm going to point out in the back here. So we've got our sleeves in the back if we need to throw in some extras, and then along the back of the seat here, we've got the ability to fold this down, and we've got some convenient cup holders. Starting off on the driver's side door here, we've got at the very top our side view mirror adjustment. So we're going to press the button here. When the vehicle's turned on, it's going to highlight orange. That's going to let you know that we actually are adjusting the side view mirror. From there, we can use the directional pad in order to adjust the mirror as necessary. This button here is going to be the window lock button, so it essentially locks out the windows so that people in the back can't roll the windows down. More of a child safety feature than anything. And then we've got our window down and our up switches here. Looking up here, we've got our traditional unlock and our lock button, and we've also got our seat memory, so 1, 2, and 3. One thing to point out on the Edge Titanium is that the steering wheel is also completely electronic, so we can store the steering wheel setting by setting up our seat and our steering wheel and then pressing and holding in order to set up our seat setting there. Moving into the vehicle itself, so we've got our fog lights here. So in order to turn the fog lights on, we're just going to press this button here. We've got 4 individual settings here for the lights. The only 2 that I recommend you worry about, far off to the left here, is going to turn the lights completely off. All the way to the right is going to be our auto lamps. So that's automatically going to turn on the daytime and the nighttime headlamps as necessary. So I do recommend keeping it on the auto lamp setting all the time. Trust me, it's a huge time saver. From here, we've got our plus and minus button, and this is in order to make the screen lighter or darker as necessary. And then off to the side a little bit more here, we've got our trunk release button there, so another way to open up the trunk. And then we can also turn off our electronic stability control or our traction control by pressing this button here. Now the steering wheel itself is telescopic and it is electronic. In order to be able to adjust the steering wheel, just off to underneath this turning signal stick here, so you can see we've got a directional pad. So all we have to do to adjust the steering wheel is we can move it and out away from us, we can move it in towards us, and then we can move it up and down. That's simple. Now, in order to be able to adjust the seats on this thing, just off on the left-hand side of the driver's side, it's going to be on the right-hand side of the passenger side. You can see a series of levers. So by pushing the lever down, we're going to lower the seat. Lifting it up, we're going to raise the seat. And then we can move the seat forwards or backwards as necessary. If we want to adjust the backrest here, we're going to use this second stick here. We're just going to move it in or out as necessary. And then this last one here is going to be for our power lumbar support. So a little bit of extra lower back support there. So this is a screen that we're going to be met with when we first start the vehicle up. We've got our navigation or our map settings there. We've also got our currently playing station. If we've got our phone plugged in, it's whatever song's currently going on here. And then we can also add a phone here, we can add a phone here, and a few other places. This button here is going to be for our heated steering wheel. The nice thing about the Titanium is that it does have a heated steering wheel standard, which is really comfortable, especially during those cold winter months. Moving to our audio settings here, up at the top, we've got our sources, so we can change between AM, FM, Sirius XM, or Bluetooth stereo. So if we've got an MP3 player connected, our phone, whatever the case may be, those entertainment sources will be listed here as well. Moving back, we can tune a couple different ways. So we can tune using our voice, we can do a direct tune here. There's also a tuning knob right down here. Oh, let's readjust you a little bit. So there's a manual tune that we can do here as well. But direct tune, very straightforward. So in order to tune to a station, we're going to press whatever station we'd like to and hit enter. And as you can see, it's changed our station there. Now, in order to save a preset, all we're going to do is we're going to tune to the station that we want to save. And then all we're going to do is press and hold one of these buttons. And as you can see, we now have that station saved as well. Moving down to our climate settings here, we've got a ton of options that are available. There are a few more options that are available just lower and off of the screen here, but let's focus on the screen for now. So our auto setting is going to automatically let the vehicle determine what the cabin temperature should be. Moving to the menu here, we can turn on the max air conditioning, the max windshield defroster, or we can also turn the heated steering wheel on or off from here. Moving here, we've got our power button. That's going to turn the heat or the air conditioning on as necessary. And as you can see here, we've got the ability for dual zone climate control. So if the driver likes it a little bit colder than the passenger does, what we can do is we can then adjust on the passenger side. And we've got a different temperature setting here. And now as we can see, we now have dual mode activated. So dual zone climate control is activated for the driver and passenger side. In order to turn that off and default to the driver's setting, we're just going to hit that dual button here. And as you can see, it's taken that driver setting. Moving down a little bit, we've got our, where is the fan going to be blowing to? So we've got to the windshield, to our face, and to our feet. This is going to control the intensity of the fan. And then moving down here, so we've got our air circulation button. So when this button is off, what's going to happen is the vehicle is going to be pulling air from outside. It's a little bit harder on the air compressor in order for that to work, but it does make things a little bit cooler. In comparison, if we have this circulation button going on, it's going to circulate the air that's currently in the cabin. Looking here, we've got our rear windshield defroster, and then we can turn the air conditioning on from here. In order to be able to hook a phone up to the vehicle, all we're going to do is press this phone button here and add a phone.
Search for your vehicle on your device and select it once it is found.
Now we're going to go into our phone and make sure that our Bluetooth is turned on. And we're just going to give that a second here. As you can see, we've got Forward Edge appearing here.
Confirm that the pin displayed on sync matches the pin displayed on your device.
Yes, that's correct. And we're going
to
safety, allow.
Please stay alert to changing road conditions and use Sync's voice-activated features while your vehicle is in motion.
And there we go. So now we've got a couple options here, so we can automatically download our contacts and then 911 Assist. So your phone does have to be connected in order for 911 Assist to work. Just going to hit finish there, and then as you can see, we've got recent calls, contacts, my iPhone. We can change the phone, do not disturb mode. So we've got a lot of options here. Now, in order to be able to delete the phone from the vehicle, what we're going to do is go to Settings, Phone. And as you can see, we can view devices, we can manage contacts, but we're going to go view devices here. And we've got my phone here. So by clicking that, we've now got the option to disconnect from the phone. There we go. We've got the ability to disconnect, or we can completely remove it. So by hitting remove here, we're going to say yes. And the phone is now disconnected. Next up, moving into our navigation settings. So we've got a couple options here. Jumping into search, we can view history. So if we've already searched for devices, if we've already searched for locations, the locations that we've already been are going to show up in our history here. We can set up our home or work addresses here. We can add in some favorites, point of interest, etc. Now, in order to search for an address, we're just going to type it in. And give it a few seconds in between as you type, because it's automatically going to update as we go here. Once you've found the address you want to go, you're simply going to select it. And you're just going to hit the start button.
Obey traffic laws, be alert, and use voice commands while driving. Please proceed to the highlighted route, and then the route guidance will start.
So very straightforward here. In order to be able to cancel the route out that we're taking, all we're going to do is press this X button at the top and cancel route, yes. Moving up, let's hit the control button here and jump into our menu. We've got a couple different options for the screen view. Big one to focus on here is going to be our navigation settings. So we've got our map preferences, route preferences, and our navigation. Jumping into map preferences, we can add in point of interest icons. That would be things like Starbucks, Tim Hortons, gas stations, etc. Moving into route preferences, we can change between different options. So things like the fastest route, the most economic route, it's whatever your preference is there. One thing to point out, if we move to the bottom a bit, as you can see, we've got avoid freeways, toll roads, ferries, or tunnels. So if you have a preference not to travel on toll roads, you can select that here, and the vehicle's navigation will avoid toll roads like the 407, etc. And then navigation preferences, just going to be our guidance prompts. So we've got a few options here. Our voice and tones, voice or tones only. Voice and tones means that you're going to get an auditory, you're going to be turning left in 200 meters, I should say. And then you're going to get a ding as you get closer. The voice is going to be just that, whereas the tone is strictly going to be that ding that you get as you get closer to the next turn. And then the other one to point out are going to be setting up our home and work address here. So home, all we're going to do is add in a favorite from there, select your address, hit save. Very straightforward. So I'll show you here. Add a favorite for home, yes. And there we go. So we're just going to select that. And then all we're going to do is press this star button now, and it's now been saved. So it's very, very straightforward in order to use this one here. Jumping into apps. Apps really only work when our phone's connected, so it does tie into the mobile apps section of it as well. Mobile apps that you can use. The big one you're probably going to end up using is going to be the Waze app. This thing does have built-in navigation, but sometimes people have a preference and prefer to use the Waze app instead. From here, we've got a couple other settings. So jumping into our sound, we can change off to the treble, mid-range, bass, all that fun stuff. Clock settings, we've got our few options here. So it's going to default to our 12-hour time, so our AM and PM settings. If you prefer the 24-hour military time, all you have to do is press the button here. And then we're in military time now. Next up is going to be our daylight savings time. So daylight savings time is automatically going to update you depending on if we're in the spring or the fall. Because obviously if we're in the spring, we're going to spring forward an hour. If we're in the fall, we're going to fall back an hour. So this means the vehicle is automatically going to adjust it for us. Scrolling down a little bit, we've also got an auto time zone update. So if we're heading to the East Coast or the West Coast, whatever the case may be, with this enabled, the vehicle is automatically going to update the time depending on the time zone that you're in. Really, really cool feature. Bluetooth, that's where we can turn Bluetooth on or off, or we can add Bluetooth devices in from here. Our phone settings, very straightforward. We were already in there. We would go here in order to be able to add a phone. Radio now, we can change a couple things. So we can change that radio text so that it doesn't display on the audio section here. So with that turned off, that means this info here, whether or not that shows. Next up is going to be our 911 assist. Again, that's tied into having the phone connected to the vehicle. And then our navigation, so that jumps back into the navigation settings again. Mobile apps, as I said, the phone does need to be connected to the vehicle in order for the mobile apps to work. But mobile apps via USB, that's really going to be when you're using an iPhone. You can use Android Auto or Apple CarPlay in the vehicle. Next up, we've got some general settings here. So some general settings to look at. We can change our language between English, Spanish, or French. Temperature, we can change between Celsius or Fahrenheit, I should say. Measurement units, we've got kilometers or miles. Touchscreen beep, so this beep that we're getting, we can turn that off if you prefer, or turn it back on there. Automatic system updates. I do recommend keeping the automatic system updates on. And the reason why is because it's automatically going to update the software and the firmware for the vehicle for you, except the navigation. Everything else is going to be updated automatically with the exception of the navigation. Now, if you're ever selling the vehicle, you want to make sure in order to do a reset, we're just going to go General Settings Reset, and then a Master Reset there. And that's going to reset the vehicle's system here to its factory default. Moving off here, we've got our Wi-Fi. So Wi-Fi automatic updates are going to go hand in hand here. So in order for the Wi-Fi to work, all we're going to do is be at home, enter our Wi-Fi password, and we're good to go. Jumping into vehicle here, we've got some different setting options here. We've got our camera settings, door keypad code. So there's a couple different ways that we can change the keypad code. There's a 5-digit combination. There is a factory one for every Ford vehicle. 5-digit code, all we're going to do is enter that in here if we want to create our own unique code. And that's to be able to get into the vehicle if you don't have the key fob on you. Next up, we've got our display setting here. So we can turn the display off. Press the button here for it to come back on again. Background, we can change that. And the other one is going to be our mode here. So auto, we've got day and nighttime mode. So we're currently in our daytime mode here. But if you prefer the nighttime mode, we can select that. It takes a second for it to update. And as you can see, we've got our nighttime mode here. I'm personally a bigger fan of the nighttime mode. I think it looks pretty damn sharp, but it's your own personal preference there. You can keep it in the auto mode and it's automatically going to flip you between the day and the nighttime mode. Next up is going to be our voice control settings here. So we've got 3 different options. Our advanced mode is going to give us different prompts as we go through navigating the vehicle. So let's turn off the advanced mode. I'm going to change the radio station and I want you to listen to this for a second. Tune to 99.9.
Tuning to FM 99.9.
So as you can see there, we got a little message as we went, as we changed the station. So if we turn the advanced mode on and we press that navigation button again, or the voice command button, I should say, tuned to 94.9. Now it's changed the station for us, and it hasn't given us that confirmation that it's changing the station. The same idea with a phone confirmation. If we're making a phone call, we get a confirmation whether or not we want to call that person. And then our voice command list is going to be this list here. So this is going to be our voice command list. So if you prefer not to have that list up, all you have to do is turn it off here. Next up is going to be our valet mode. So valet mode essentially locks the screen out so that people can't play around with it. Very, very useful if you ever have a valet park your vehicle, because if you have your phone connected, they technically can go through your text messages and contacts and things like that. So do we wish to continue? Yes. All we're going to do is enter a 4-digit combination. Very difficult. 1111 and 1111 and done. And then as you can see there, the system is now locked out. So we can press the screen all we want to. We can't actually access anything now because valet mode is enabled. In order to turn valet mode off, all we're going to do is same thing. So 1111 and press done, and it's unlocked the screen for us there. Last up is going to be our ambient light. Now we're obviously in the daytime right now, so you can't see the ambient light in the cup holders, but it's in the cup holders and in a few other strategic places in the vehicle. We can select whatever our color preference is from there, as well as the intensity of the light. And that's going to be the Sync 3 screen in a nutshell. Now moving down just a little bit here, a few things to point out. First and foremost, we've got our emergency or our 4-way blinkers here. So all we're going to do in order to turn the 4-ways on is press that button and then turn it off from there. Now just off to the side here, we've got a little camera icon, and that gives us the ability to use the front-facing camera. So that gives us a front partial view. Pressing it again gives it a front 180-degree view. It's a very, very useful one, especially if you've got an underground parking spot, in order to make sure that you don't have pedestrians coming on either side of the vehicle. Pressing it one more time is going to turn it off. And moving down a little bit, now we've got some more of our climate control settings. So we've got our auto cabin setting. It lets the vehicle determine what the cabin temperature is going to be. This is going to be our max windshield defroster. This is going to be our windshield defroster. This is going to be our rear windshield defroster. Off to the right-hand side, we can turn our air conditioning on. We can turn the max AC on. We can circulate the cabin air instead, and then we can turn the system on or off. These buttons here are going to be for the radio, or if we've got a phone connected, it's going to be for that. So by pressing the Seek button here, we can change between radio stations. We've also got the ability to switch between songs if we've got our CD player. How old is that? Our MP3 player or our phone connected. From here, we've got our tuning button, so we can manually tune using this button here as well. And then we've got our voice control, our volume control here. And then we can turn the radio on or off using this button here. Moving down a tiny bit more, we've got a few other buttons here now. We've got cooled and heated seats. The cooled seats, leather seats, they're so damn nice. All we're going to do is press that once and it turns it on max. It takes a few seconds for it to cool down, but trust me, you do feel it, and it feels really, really good. Couple more times to turn it off. We've got our heated seats here as well. Now that is both for the driver and for the passenger side. As I mentioned, the vehicle does have dual zone climate control, so we can control the temperature settings here for the driver and for the passenger side, and then we can control the intensity of the fan here as well. Now moving down this little compartment here, in order to open it up, all we're going to do is press the button here and that pops it open. Inside we've got a wireless charging pad, so if your phone is compatible with wireless charging, then it's going to give you the ability to do that here. From here we've got 2 standard USB ports. And then moving down, so one of the nice things is Ford has kind of thought through technology quite a little bit when it comes to the vehicle. But looking here, we've got a couple places where we can strategically place our phone. So we can place our phone here. There's also a little compartment just to the back here as well for a little bit of extra storage. It's a really, really cool thing that Ford's done. Looking at some buttons here, we've got our park, reverse, neutral, or drive settings, as well as our sport setting. That sport button in the middle there is going to give us a little bit more control over the paddle shifters. From here, we've got our parking brake, so we can turn that on or off as necessary. In order to turn it off, we're just going to press our brake and push that down. In order to turn the parking brake on, we're just going to lift it up. Looking here now, we've got our auto start stop. That's the engine start stop. So the one that's automatically going to stop the engine when we're stopped at a light or in traffic for an excessive period of time. If you don't like the engine stopping, all you're going to do is press this button here and it's going to highlight, letting you know that it's off. It will reset when you turn the vehicle off, having said that. Two other buttons here. We've got our park assist button as well as our parking aid. So as we reverse, the parking aid is that beeping that we get as we get closer and closer to an obstacle. So if you don't like that, you can turn it off by pressing the button here. Park assist is very, very straightforward. So all we're going to do in order to use the park assist is press this button here. And if we look up on the screen now, we've got a couple different options. So we can go between parallel park out, we can do some perpendicular parking, or we can do a parallel park. So let's take a quick look and see how that system works. Next up, what we're going to do is figure out how the parallel parking system or perpendicular parking system works. So as we can see down here, we've got a button that's going to be our parallel or perpendicular park button. So parallel parking is not what we want to do right now. We're going to switch it out to the perpendicular park. You can search between either the left or the right side. So you're just going to hit your signal. If you want to go left, it's going to default look to the right. So we're just going to drive forward now. The car will find a spot, perfect, and we're just going to follow the instructions and stop. Now we're going to shift into reverse, and you are still going to be working the gas and the brake, so make sure you give it a little bit of gas there, and then make sure that your foot's hovering near the brake as well. Damn, I love this system. Oh, what you doing? What you doing? What are you doing? Oh, that's ballsy. All right, here we go. And reverse. There we go. And there we go. Super simple to do. You can do parallel or perpendicular parking. Jumping back to the screen here, so we can do parallel park, we can do perpendicular park, or we can do parallel park out. Very, very simple system to use. Looking up above us here, we've got a couple things. So firstly is going to be our sunglasses holder here. So we can add our sunglasses in there. Off to the right-hand side here, we've got a button for cabin light. So that's going to be our passenger side cabin light. We've got our driver's side cabin light. We can turn on all the lights. So that's going to be for the front and the back. And then this one here is going to be whether or not the cabin lights come on when the door is open. From here, we've got a few other buttons. So as you can see here, this vehicle does have that twin panel moonroof. So a very, very big roof there. So in order to open up the shade, all we're going to do is press the shade away button here. So closer to the passenger. And that'll open up the shade there. And then as you can see, we've got a couple other options here. So if we just want to pop the window, the moonroof open a bit, I should say, we're just going to press this button here, and that's going to give it a little bit of a lift. We can close it here. Or if we want to completely open up that moonroof, we're just going to press this away button here. And one button press opens it up the majority of the way. Pressing it again is going to open it up that last little bit. And then in order to close it, same idea. All we're going to do is press this button here, which is again going to close it up the majority of, about halfway. And then pressing again is going to close it down the rest of the way. Next up, let's look at a few of the steering wheel settings. So firstly, as you can see, we've got a little plus and minus button here. So up at the top, those are going to be our paddle shifters. Those let us determine what gear we're in. We get a little bit more control of the vehicle when we use these paddle shifters here. Looking down off on the left-hand side here, as you can see, this is going to be for our adaptive cruise control. The vehicle is equipped with adaptive cruise. I highly recommend getting to know how the adaptive cruise control system works. It's a very, very easy system to use, and once you figure it out, you're never going to go back to regular cruise control again. In order to turn the system on, we're just going to press the on button here. And then as you can see there, we've got a few lanes that have appeared here. So let me turn it off for you to show you. So now we've got that here, and then if we look, we've got a distance button here, and that's going to determine how far or close we are to the vehicle in front of us. So we've got a couple different options there. Next up, once we've gotten to the setting that we'd like to, the speed that we'd like to, I should say, we're just going to hit that set button, and then we can adjust, increase 1 kilometer or 1 mile per hour at a time by pressing this button here. The last button here is going to be for our lane centering system. So our lane keeping system, we can turn on or off using the button just at the tip of this here. So as you can see, there's a tiny little button here. So we're just going to press that in order to turn the lane keeping system on or off. We know that the system's activated when we see these lanes here. So the lane keeping system's currently off. By turning it on, we can see that those lanes are on there. So the system's on. In order for it to actually turn on, though, we need to be going a little over 60 kilometers an hour in order for that to work. And then if we want to cancel out our cruise control settings there or our current speed, we can do that. Off to the right-hand side here, we've got a few different buttons here. Starting at the top, we've got our seek button here. So if we want to, we can either change songs or radio stations. If we have an incoming call, we can answer the phone call, or we can hang up on the call. Moving down, we've got our voice command button. Our voice command button lets us make a phone call. We can change the radio station if we'd like to, or we can navigate somewhere. So if you want to navigate home, you can simply press that button, say navigate home. We've got our mute button here as well as our volume rocker. So with our volume up, I can press that mute button there in order to mute the song. Moving up now, as you can see, we've got 2 different directional paths with 2 OK buttons here. Now, if you ever have a message that comes up on this side of the screen, you can control it by pressing this OK button here. So I'll give you an example of what happens here. I'm going to open up the driver's side door here. As you can see, we've got a couple things there. So vehicle is on and the driver door is ajar. So if we press the OK button here, as you can see, that message goes away. Now let's go to this screen here and let's go look through a couple options. So starting off, we're actually in our display mode right now. So that can give us our current RPM. Moving down, we can look at our tire pressure, our current speed, all-wheel drive, what's activated there. It's kind of cool to see this as you're driving to see which wheel is working harder. Our distance till empty for our gas tank, and then back to our RPM counter there. Moving back out, we've got our trip 1 and 2. In order to be able to reset the trip 1 and 2 settings, we're just going to press and hold the OK button here, and then it resets the value there. Jumping left, we can go to our fuel economy now, which gives us the average fuel consumption. It's obviously a little bit skewed right now just because I'm parked in the vehicle. Driver assist settings, we've got a number of different settings that are available here. As you can see, we've got our blind spot system. So our blind spot system is this little guy here. So when there's a vehicle that's entered our blind spot on either side, that's going to go orange and let us know that somebody's entered our blind spot. Cross traffic alert is a really, really cool one to have on. So if you're pulling out of a spot, so if you're backing up or if you're pulling forward, if a vehicle is coming perpendicular to you and you don't see it, cross traffic alert, you will get an audible warning letting you know that there's a vehicle there. Cruise control as a default is going to be adaptive. If you prefer the traditional cruise control, you can select normal. I don't recommend using the normal, especially once you start figuring out how the adaptive works. It's a really, really cool system. Next up here is going to be our driver alert. So the driver alert system, the way that works, fairly straightforward. It ties into the lane keeping system. So if you veer over into another lane without signaling too many times, you will get an alert telling you that you should probably rest. Next up is going to be our lane keeping system. We've got a few different modes available. So the alert only. Alert is going to be a shake in the steering wheel. The aid is going to recenter us and pull us back into our lane. And then the alert and the aid will do both. Personal preference there. Next up is going to be the intensity of the steering wheel shake. I'm not sure if you're going to be able to see it here. So there's a tiny little steering wheel shake, and that's going to be whenever we're crossing over into a lane without signaling. So your preference there is to the intensity of the alert. Moving down, we've got our pre-collision assist here now. So the pre-collision assist, the way that system works is, Let's jump back in. Pre-collision assist, the way that system works, if you are potentially going to be in a collision and you don't respond, the vehicle will actively brake for you, so it's automatically going to brake. If for whatever reason it can't get out of the way in time, evasive steering will take over and it'll crank the steering wheel out of the way in order to avoid the collision or to minimize the impact of the collision. Moving down, we've got our trailer sway settings, obviously if we have a trailer connected, and we're back to the top. Next up, moving into our settings, we've got a few different options here. We've got our vehicle settings here, which are, let's start off from the top here. So oil life reset. Oil life reset, so if when we get our oil change, we can reset the oil life there. Power liftgate is going to be the outer switch at the back of the vehicle. Remote start, is the system turned on? Yes, it is. Okay, the system's turned on, so what happens? By default, so as we can see, we've got auto or last setting. Auto is going to let the vehicle determine what the cabin temperature should be, whereas last setting is going to literally do that. It's going to turn on the settings to whatever they were before you turn the vehicle off. Next up, we've got our seats and wheel. What happens there? So automatic, it's automatically going to go to the last setting there. And then the duration of the remote start, so either 5, 10, or 15 minutes, whatever your preference is there. Next up, we've got windows here, so remote open, so we can remote open the windows using the key fob. And then our wipers here, so we've got either the courtesy wipe or the rain sensing wiper. So courtesy wipe, when the vehicle's turned on, it's going to give you an initial wipe. I don't recommend having that one on, especially in the winter time, because if the vehicle has a lot of ice, or I should say if the windshield wipers have a lot of ice on them, it could potentially injure or damage one of the motors. Injure a motor, that's ridiculous. Next up is going to be our rain sensing wipers. I do recommend keeping this one on because it's automatically going to adjust the intensity of the windshield wipers depending on whether or not it's raining outside. So really, really cool feature to have. Looking at the windshield wipers here, so we've got our stick here. We can control the speed here by going up and down. In order to use the windshield wiper fluid, all we're going to do is we're going to pull in towards us to get the front windshield wiper fluid. And we're going to push the stick away from us in order to use the rear windshield wiper fluid. In order to turn the rear wipers on or off, at the very end of the stick here, you can see just at the tip, there's a little button there. We're just going to lift that up in order to turn on the rear windshield wiper. Moving back a section now and scrolling down, we've got our auto engine off, so we can turn that system on or off here as well. Moving down, we've got our easy entry exit. So with that enabled, we don't need to take our key fob out in order to be able to unlock the vehicle. Lighting, auto high beams. I do recommend keeping the auto high beams on. And the reason behind that is because it's automatically going to turn the high beams on or off as necessary. So it's a really, really cool setting to have. I do recommend keeping that one on. And then the next up is going to be our auto lamp delay. So auto lamp delay is going to be when the vehicle's turned off, how long do the lights stay on for? So there's no delay, they're on for 10 seconds, 20 seconds, etc. It's your personal preference there. Next up, we've got our lock setting. Lock setting, we've got a few options. So we can do an auto unlock or remote unlock. When a remote unlock is done, what happens? Do all doors get unlocked or just the driver's door? Next up is going to be our My Key. So our My Key setting, as you can see, we've got no key set up right now. Our My Key allows us to create a certain set of rules for a specific key fob. So let's say if you're lending the vehicle to your kids or you want to pull a prank on a friend, what you can do is you can have it so that a certain key fob has limitations. So let's say if you don't want the vehicle to be able to go past a certain speed, or the radio may not come on until the seatbelt's plugged in. It's a really, really cool system to use. Reference the owner's manual to figure out how to set that one up. Next up is going to be our display setup. So again, we can change between either miles per gallon, liters per 100, kilometers per 100, depends on your preference there. Temperature, Celsius or Fahrenheit. Our gauge, we can choose between our fuel gauge or our fuel tachometer. Our tire pressure, we can change out how that's measured there. And then our language, jumping back between English, Spanish, or French. That's going to be the left-hand side here. Now off to the right, we've got another directional pad, and that's going to control this screen on the right side here. So as you can see, we've got a few different options here. So we can change between different stations there. We can change between different presets. Or we can look at our navigation so we can see what direction we're currently going with a built-in compass there. And then if we had our phone connected, we'd be able to look at our phone settings there or see what song is currently playing on our phone. Oh yeah. Let's take this thing for a spin and see what it's all about. Okay, mirrors adjusted, backrest good. Let's do it. Oh, parking brake's on, so in order to be able to disengage the parking brake, again, make sure that the brake is on, and we're just going to push that parking brake button down. Now, one thing to point out is that in the Edge titanium, I should say, it is a true leather seat, so it's a very, very comfortable seat. But as I mentioned, it also does have these heated and cooled seats. So I do like it when it's a little bit colder. So I'm just going to turn those cooled seats on there. And here we go. That cooled seat, it turns on so quick. So quick. Oh, that's great. That's one of the nice things about these things as well, too. Like, one of the drawbacks of leather seats was always that if you had a leather seat, you were in trouble in the summertime because your butt would be on fire. Not so much anymore. These cooled seats are literally a huge butt saver. Nice and comfortable. As expected, like, the vehicle is very, very spacious. Like, especially if you're coming from a sedan or a smaller SUV, it's a nice upgrade. It's a little bit more spacious than the Escape, which is really, really nice. It gives you a little bit more space in the trunk. It's a little bit wider here as well. It feels like a little bit more of an open vehicle. It's pretty nice. Couple things are currently engaged. I've got the auto start stop system engaged, or on I should say. And let's see. Okay, so it didn't turn on there. Again, that auto, as we can see, the start stop system doesn't always happen. The engine doesn't always turn off. It is just kind of on a case by case basis there when it happens. And it's the vehicle deciding when it wants to come on and when it wants to keep it off. So there's really no rhyme or reason when it happens. It just kind of, it does its thing. Really curious to see. I want to try out this lane keeping system a little bit more today. So yesterday traffic was a little bit more chaotic, but the highway is looking pretty empty right now. So Let's see what happens. The lane keeping system is definitely, it's turned on. You can tell that it's on. Where are you going, fella? Oh yeah, you're just speeding, are you, bud? Oh, they've opened this back up. That's good. Okay, there's a couple cars in front of me that are turning onto the highway. So, as always, all I'm going to do is kind of hang back a little bit, let them do their thing, and then I'm going to work up to the highway speed there. Okay, so this one is a 2-liter turbo, so there are 2 engine choices that are available in the Edge. It's either a 2-liter turbo in the base trim levels, the SE, the SEL, or the Titanium, and then the ST has a 2.7-liter 6-cylinder instead. So this is the 2-liter turbo, and let's see. Oh yeah, still plenty of power. Oh, that's nice. Plenty of power. Okay, let's play around with, let's actually go adaptive cruise for a second here. So let's turn the adaptive cruise on. I'm going to set it at my current speed there. Perfect. And I'm also going to try the lane keeping system now with the adaptive cruise on. So I'm just going to slightly go over into a lane. And it's pulled me back over and it's recentered me in mine. It's like, no. You're staying in your lane. I like that. Okay, let's try it here. Same thing. It's quick. The system is really quick to respond to that, pulling you back into your lane. Like, it's really cool. So what happens is as you start to veer into another lane without signaling, the lanes actually go yellow. So as you can see there, and then the second it goes yellow, it's going to pull you back into your lane. It's really cool. Stepping closer and closer to self-driving cars. It's real. Oh, those times when you want to try out the engine start and stop, but you can't because there's no stops in your trip. Green lights all the way around. That's amazing. Watch, I say that now, and now there's going to be nothing but red lights for the rest of the trip. That's okay. Still default, like there is the blind spot indicator system. It lets us know if anybody's entered the blind spot in the vehicle, but as a default, I always check my blind spot regardless. It's such a comfortable drive. It feels nice. Looks like we're coming up to a scenario where you're going to be able to see that blind spot system kick on. Let's see it happen here. So as you can see, we've got that orange highlight there. It's a really neat system. It's such an unobtrusive thing as well. There's no annoying dinging or anything like that. It's just a very subtle thing on your side view mirror, and you typically check your side view mirror anyways. This just gives you that added security of knowing that yes, there is nobody in your blind spot. You can hear the turbo a little bit, like a teeny little bit, but it's not that like crazy turbo whine that you get sometimes with turboed engines, which is kind of nice. Oh yeah. Handles nicely. So literally exactly what we've come to expect from Ford vehicles. They're well built. They're quiet vehicles. Powerful when you need them. And then I guess one of the nice things about the Edges is that they're also built in Oakville. So Oakville, Ontario, which is kind of cool. So on the Ford lineup, it's the Edge, and on the Lincoln lineup, it would be the Nautilus that are built in Ontario. Pretty cool. There we go, and actually what I'm going to do, let's do a quick park just so you can see what that's like. Or hear what that's like, I should say, especially as we get closer to the obstacles behind us. So we will hear that beeping as we go. Of course, there's no... Okay, there we go. So that beeping's going to happen as we get closer and closer to obstacles behind us here. But that is the test drive and the review of the 2020 Ford Edge Titanium. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, please leave a comment below. Let me know that you liked the video by giving it a thumbs up. Subscribe if you can. And if you have any questions about the vehicle, drop it down below. If you have anything that you want me to answer, if you have any vehicles that you want me to check out, let me know. I hope you guys enjoyed it. See you soon.